lot of fun. Joining us now, friend of the pod, the Los Angeles Rams starting safety and defensive captain, Quentin Lake joins us. Quentin, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic today. How about yourself?
Doing great. Thanks for taking the time. And of course, you can follow Quentin on X at Quentin_Lake. And, defensive captain, that is a nice ring to it, doesn't it? How did it make you feel to have that kind of recognition from your teammates coming into this year?
Yeah, it was such an honor. You get caught up in the hard work and effort that you're putting in on the field, especially through OTAs and training camp, that you kind of lose track of, what's really going on. And, luckily my teammates and the coaching staff and everybody in the building recognized, all the effort that's put in, and they ended up, honoring me captain. So it was such an honor, such a blessing to be able to, have that achievement. But at the same time, I knew that, I wouldn't be in the position that I am today without them, without, the collaboration, all the hard work and effort that they put in. So yeah, it was definitely a great feeling to, get honor captain.
That's awesome stuff. And of course, you have those NFL bloodlines, right? Carnell Lake, one of the greatest defensive backs to ever put on a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform, is your father. So, in
Yeah.
terms of you growing up, watching him, and then, of course, coming up in your own career, what kind of lessons did you learn from him in terms of being that locker room leader and also in terms of shaping your own skill set as a safety?
Yeah, the biggest thing I learned from him in terms of how to carry myself on a day-to-day basis was control what you can control. And there are three main things that he told me, no matter what day, no matter, in any portion of your life, these are the three things that you can control is your attitude. How are you presenting yourself when you come into the building? Do you always have a smile on your face? Are you coachable? That was the first thing was attitude. The next thing was your effort. Are you going all out in practice? Are you treating practice like the game? Are you putting in the effort to study, doing the extracurriculars, whatever you need to do, to be able to, transition to my next controllable, which is being prepared. Preparation is huge. Obviously, we know that, being players in the NFL is who really is the most prepared team on Sunday. And that was another thing that you can control. Are you watching film? Are you making the right adjustments? Are you writing down notes? Are you making sure that you're doing your homework so that when Sunday comes, you're the most prepared and you're putting yourself in a position to make plays. So those are the three tidbits that he gave me. And then in terms of just football, he always told me, there really are no friends when crossing in the white lines, whether it's in practice or in the game. Obviously, it's a little bit different when you get into the season is you don't want to hurt your guys, but at the same time, you always want to have the mindset that you're trying to take somebody's job. And those are the things that he told me. If you want to have a long, lengthy career in the NFL, is you have to go out there and you got to make sure that you're trying to take somebody's job. Nothing's guaranteed. Everything is a fight each and every day. And the NFL is cutthroat. You can't ride the emotional wave. You can't really get into the nitty gritty of the politics. At the end of the day, and like I've been, talking about, is control what you can control, and making sure that each and every day you're prepared, whether you have an opportunity or not, to be able to put yourself in a position to be successful.
And you're off to a really successful start to the season yourself personally. 43 total tackles. You have the sack, kind of been a presence up near the line of scrimmage and in coverage as well. But I know you made a couple comments a couple weeks ago that you weren't necessarily satisfied with that high tackle number and that you wanted to make plays in different ways. What
Yeah.
do you kind of mean by that? And do you feel like you've accomplished a lot of the things so far that you set out to going into this season?
Yeah, tackling's great. Sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you end up accumulating a lot of tackles. For me, it's I kind of set my standard on impactful plays in a game. Can you come out a game with one impact play? And what I mean by impact play is, a sack, a forced fumble, an interception, maybe a couple PBUs, TFLs. Those are true impact plays. And I've obviously set a standard of, the goal is to come out with, one of those. Now tackling is great. I hit the franchise record for tackles for defensive back in the first 5 games, which was awesome. But at the same time is, those aren't necessarily impactful, game-changing plays. And I think, where I want to be in my career is, have those game-changing plays, have those, whether it's an interception, whether it's a forced fumble, stuff like that. And the opportunities are there. And I think for myself is understanding where my play opportunities are so that I can make those plays and have those things happen. So, never satisfied in the terms of my play, but, always looking at, where can I improve and where are my opportunities where I can, change the game.
And you've talked a lot about the preparation during the week, that grind from Monday to Saturday going into a Sunday game and wanting to elevate your game, being more balanced in terms of interceptions and the impact plays. Are there things you can do during the week to kind of hone in on, all right, this week I'm going to make it my goal. I want to read the quarterback's eyes better, or I want to be able to play better man press coverage so that maybe when a guy has a ball bounce off his hand, I'm in a better position. Are there things that you can do during the week to help you reach some of those goals?
Yeah, those are definitely things. When you're watching the film, you kind of get an idea of, okay, how is the offense going to try and attack us, specifically on the defensive side. And then what I do is I write down, not only do we have overall play opportunities in terms of grand scheme on the defensive side, but for myself, I write down what are my personal play opportunities. So if there is a certain, offensive formation that they come out with, or if there's a certain alignment, or if I'm in a certain technique, what are the things that I can do to make myself be in a better position to make plays? Obviously, you don't want to guess, but you want to make calculated, anticipated decisions that help you, be in a better position to make those plays. So that's what I've done, recently. And it's been helping me a lot. You kind of understand like, hey, if you get this look, put yourself in this technique or put yourself in this position where, if you get the play that you want, you can go out there, play fast and make a play.
And you've had the opportunity to practice against some elite receivers, and of course Matthew Stafford at quarterback. You can really iron sharpens iron during practice and all those things. But I'm telling you, man, just from afar, you know, one thing I admire about Sean McVay and the Rams is you guys develop elite wide receivers, whether it's Puka, whether it's Tutu Atwell. Now you look at coming on the scene, Jordan Whittingham has really stepped into his own. He has like 208 pass receiving yards so far this year, really making an impact. What stands out when you're going up against Jordan with him as a player and kind of his potential as he develops?
Yeah, Jordan's been a huge help. He's definitely, maximized his opportunity with guys being down, but he's a fantastic player. And I think what happens is when you have an elite caliber of guys like we do, it kind of boosts everybody up. And that's what I've seen from Jordan is, he's been able to, capitalize, and when his numbers called, he's making plays. But to be able to go against these guys each and every day, they're so technical in what they do. And I think, off Sean McVay and the rest of the coaches do a great job of putting these guys in positions. Not only do they block well, not only do they catch the ball, but you talk about catch transition where they're getting yards after catch. So and then obviously you have number 9 Matthew Stafford. These guys, he's so precise with it. In terms of where he puts the ball, the spin on the ball, all that stuff, the accuracy. He's second to none. And going against him and going against these guys in practice, you have to be almost perfect at each and every snap. So it only gets you better. It only gets you more prepared. And, I'm so thankful to, have such great coaches and such great teammates to be able to push me to be a better player and also understand that, I'll be ready, Sundays, whether it's, going against any team because, of the looks that we get during the week.
And one of those teams that you went up against recently, I know the game didn't go the way you guys would have liked, but you had the chance to play against Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious as a defensive player, what's your read on Caleb, where he is as a quarterback right now? What sets him apart? What impressed you the most going up against him?
I think, his ability to make plays on his feet, he's very elusive. And he has a great arm. I think last week, the game in London that they played, I'm pretty sure they played the Jaguars.
It was wild, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Watching the game kind of slow down for him a little bit.
yeah, so like he's coming into his own, and I think, when you're a rookie, there's a lot of pressure coming in as a rookie quarterback. You want to succeed early, but at the same time, you have to understand that the NFL is a learning process when you're a rookie. I had to learn a lot when I was a rookie, and I think now we're seeing Caleb get into his groove. He looks a lot more comfortable back there. When we were going against him, we were trying to attack him in a lot of different ways, keep him in the pocket, make sure he's going through all his reads, and stuff like that. But now I think, he's getting to the point where he's more comfortable. Obviously he's gelling with the guys that he has at the receiver position and the tight end position. So, things are coming to his own. I think he's going to be a great quarterback in this league. It sucks that we didn't get the result that we wanted against him, but, at the same time, he's doing what he can, and obviously the results are showing for him. So Um, hopefully maybe one if they make the playoffs and we make the playoffs, we get a little revenge match going on, and the outcome would be a little bit different. Rams on top, but yeah, he's progressing well in the NFL.
For sure. And, the big step towards getting back into that playoff conversation started with you guys getting the biggest win of the season against the San Francisco 49ers. And there are few rivalries in all of sports that are as heated as Rams Niners, right? And, I know that players all the time, probably yourself included, say, hey, it's one game at a time, one week at a time, all the games count the same. But what is a rivalry like that really like for you guys? Rams, Niners, NFC West always means a lot. What are those games like for you?
Yeah, sometimes you treat, those conference games as like almost playoff games. Those are, if you win the conference, you go to the playoffs. No matter what your record, you go to the playoffs. It doesn't matter. So those are like the golden nuggets for us. Like those games are so important. You highlight those games during the week, especially for the, 49ers because of our long history. We battled them in the playoffs in 21, ended up coming on top. So and they obviously have had their fair share of success in the playoffs and then obviously making it to multiple Super Bowls. So, those are, nitty-gritty games that, obviously, our first matchup we came out on top, which was fantastic, but you kind of highlight those games on your calendar to make sure that, you really got to be ready. Obviously, like you said, you have to be ready every week, but there's a little bit more of an emphasis because of, they're in your division. And I know, every team will tell you that across the league is, whether you're in the AFC or whether you're in the NFC, the games in your division are just so important because, you win your division, you go to the playoffs. So, luckily, we're doing okay in our division. We're 1-1, which is good. But obviously we have to focus on this week, and when those conference games come, they come, and we'll be ready for those when they come.
And obviously, a lot of football left to be played this year, and you got the Niners win under your belt already. What's the biggest key to turning things around and building some of the momentum and getting things kind of snowballing in the right direction for the defense? And I guess offensively, it just comes down to getting healthy around Matthew, right? Getting the weapons back, getting everybody back on the field. But for you guys on defense, what do you think is the biggest key to righting the ship?
I think the biggest thing for us is, getting the job done. That's one thing I want to emphasize this week is, get the job done. We have to play a complete game. We can't start off slow and try to work our way back. We can't start off hot and then end up, teetering off at the end of the game. We have to play, all four quarters have to be, solid. And I think another thing for us is takeaways, taking the ball away, limiting the explosive plays, and, being able to impact the game so that we put our offense in better positions. And that's, obviously something, we've emphasized right when we came back after the bye, and something that we're going to continue to emphasize, for the rest of the season. But, those are the main things that I think as a defense we need to work on, so that we can obviously get the result that we want on Sundays.
For sure. And I'll certainly be watching from afar what the Rams are doing. It's been a lot of fun, really insightful. Quentin, last one before I let you go, a little bit of fun here. We're doing this today on a day when you see Devontae Adams get traded to the New York Jets. You don't have to face him on Sunday when you guys take on the Raiders. You'll get Amari Cooper getting dealt to, he went to the Buffalo Bills, giving Josh Allen another weapon, two superstars across the league, right? But when you're looking around the schedule when it comes out every year,
I know it's like you get these guys traded, although you might not play Devontae on the Raiders, we play the Jets, and we play the
right?
Bills. So it's like you see these moves and you're like, okay, well, they just added another weapon and you have to get ready for that. But this time during the year is always crazy. There are so many moving parts. You see it all the time, whether it's in social media or just, on the news, and it would be breaking news, somebody
Yeah.
got traded to somewhere. So um,
But
it's
who's the
always
certified matchup for you? Who's the wide receiver that you're going to look down your schedule and say, you know what, I want that guy. I want to go one on one against him. When the schedule comes out every year, who's the standard bearer receiver in your opinion?
I mean, you look across the league and it seems like, all teams have a premier receiver. I think some that for me that you kind of want to see and challenge yourself a little bit. Obviously, you have the Miami Dolphins on Monday night. You have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and then obviously Odell Beckham. Um, I think the Jets too. You look at that, Garrett Wilson, and then Devontae. That's going to be a two-headed monster right there. Um, Justin Jefferson in 2 weeks after the Raiders game on Thursday night. Like, so you look down the schedule, you can
You
really,
get them all.
yeah, you have them all. You have all the top guys. Obviously, we went against St. Brown, um, my guy St. Brown. First week of the season, so there's not one that I want more than the other. I think really just having the opportunity to go against these guys and really, they're these guys are proven. And as a guy that I wouldn't necessarily say I'm proven to be able to go against these guys, and obviously you want to shut them down and do well. That's a big challenge, and these are the preparation, all that stuff is going to be key and critical when you get these matchups. So it's going to be fun. Competition breeds out excellence, and to be able to go against guys that are not only very competitive but also fantastic players, that's what you want, especially as a defensive back. So looking honestly, there's no one matchup I'm looking forward to them all.
You got a lot of them. You got a lot of big time receivers coming your way down the rest of the season. He's Quentin Lake, the starting safety and defensive captain for the Los Angeles Rams. You can follow him on Twitter at Quentin_Lake. Quentin, appreciate the time. We'll talk to you further up the road, my friend, and best of luck the rest of the season.
Matt, appreciate you having me on. This was awesome.